Bet you can hear it now. I'm hungry. When are we gonna eat? I want something to eat. Nope, those aren't your kids. Those are your bees, especially in the early spring and late fall. They're hungry. And it's our responsibility to give them food if they need it. Most common thing we do is we give them sugar water. You know, the 1-to-1, 1 part sugar to 1 part water, or a 2-to-1, 2 part sugar to 1 part water. It's a pretty simple process. There's a difference. Why is it 1-to-1 in the spring and 2-to-1 in the fall? And that can have variations in different levels too. So, but 1-to-1 and 2-to-1 are the most common. 1-to-1 in the spring will encourage bees to create wax, build comb, and encourage a faster brood buildup. That's what you want in the spring. You want them to go kaboom right away. So when that flow is on, they are making honey like crazy. Well, you help them along by giving them a 1-to-1. In the fall, when they're hungry though, or they don't have enough stores to keep them healthy and happy through the winter, you need to give them more food. It's your responsibility to keep your bees alive, or they'll starve. And if bees starve, it's your fault. That's the bottom line too. My bees starve, it's my fault. I have everything in my power to give them more food. So that's what I'm doing right now. We've been in a dearth we haven't had rain for probably going on 3 weeks, and at least not enough substantial rain. I can lift a couple of my hives and I know that they're light. I've got to get some feed on them and quickly. So I'm going to make some 2-to-1 sugar. Sugar is all sucrose. And that's what the bees are really looking for if they're going to be building up stores, is they're looking for the sucrose in the sugar. Today I'm going to show you how to basically make that sugar water for them. It's an easy process. It's so simple, and it's so easy to do. I'm going to give you a couple tips on how I feed, explain a couple other kind of ways that people do feed bees, and then I'm going to take you out to the one of the bee yards and show you just how simple it is to feed bees, and ways I can make it a little bit easier. It doesn't save you trips to the yard, but it does make things a little bit easier. So we're gonna get on with it. So what kind of sugar? For home beekeepers, hobbyists, even smaller sideliners, the way to go is granulated sugar. It's the easiest, it's the most readily available, and it's something that the bees can do and work well with. They digest it well. There's cane sugar and there's beet sugar. Both of them are sucrose. Chemically, they're extremely similar. You can use either one of them. I tend to use cane sugar. I feel like for some reason it gives me a little bit better outcome. Other people will use beet sugar because beet usually means it's locally grown. Not a lot of sugarcane fields here in the United States, but there are a lot of beet fields. So some people tend toward that, but other people go, you know what? Almost every beet that's grown is a GMO plant. And I'm not comfortable giving my bees a product that came from a genetically modified organism. The plant is. The sugar beet itself, I don't know has any difference. I've never studied it, but it probably shouldn't make a difference to your bees. So either one will work. Do not use organic sugar. Organic sugar actually has some compounds in it. Could you feed it to them? You could, but it's a slightly different sugar and has some chemicals that I'm not going to get into the specifics of it, because I don't really know them that well. I just know that if there's a choice, don't use organic sugar. It isn't any better for the bees. In fact, it could possibly be a little less healthy for them. Do not use brown sugar. Brown sugar has molasses in it. And the molasses in brown sugar will give the bees dysentery. And that's a good way to kill your hive. And if you've ever had a hive with dysentery, you'll know what a mess it makes all around the hive. So you really don't want to give them brown sugar. It's not good for them. Raw sugar also has a little bit, pretty minuscule amount of molasses in it, mostly to give it the color, but still, given a choice, raw sugar probably would not be the best choice. Again, so cane sugar is so readily available, beet sugar is readily available, and that's what we've been using for years and years, again, as hobbyists and sideliners, and smaller side lighters. So let's then get on with the process of how do we mix this? Well, you need a scale, and you need sugar, and you're gonna need some bowls, okay? And you're also going to need some water. So let's talk about each one of these in detail. So everything you do is based on weight, okay? And I'm in the United States, I'm gonna use pounds. And instead of volume of water, we're going to use weight of water. And 1 gallon of water weighs 8.3 pounds. How do I know that? Hey Siri, how much does a gallon of water weigh?
A gallon of water typically weighs 8.33 pounds. This is from Wikipedia.
And if it's from Wikipedia, no, it's got to be right. So 8.33 pounds. That means that to get a 2-to-1 sugar, I'm going to have 8.3 plus 8.3 is 16.6. Or 16 and a half roughly. And you saw I did all that math in my head. 7 years of college. Advanced degrees all over the place. I never once took a math class. All the way through college. Weaved my way through it. Never took a math class. That's why I had to sit and think about 8.3 plus 8.3. Anyway, 16 and a half pounds of sugar into the water. So I'm gonna take my scale and I'm gonna take my bowl, and for that much sugar, which is almost half this bag, well, it's more than half this bag, it will fill up both of these bowls. So it's a lot of sugar and it's not cheap, but again, you know, it's what your bees need. So we're gonna start this and we're gonna weigh out our sugar, and we're gonna get our water going. So first off, we're gonna start with the water. So the water is a pretty simple thing. I know everybody's like, so what does the R stand for, Dave? Well, the R stands for rain. We use this to water our plants with it. We've got a rain barrel out back. But right now, I just filled it with regular tap water. And regular tap water is fine. Shouldn't be harmful. I guess I probably could use rainwater. Maybe it'd be better for them, a little more organic. But anyway, tap water is going to work just fine. So fill it up and then simply take the water and pour it into your pot. And then once your water is in the pot, you just simply come over and fire up your stove. Whoops. But it helps if you turn on the correct burner. You'd think after a few years I'd figure this stove out. Okay, so what you're going to do is just simply get the water hot. What you really don't want to do is get the water to a rolling boil. Well, you can get it to a rolling boil, it doesn't really matter, but you don't want to boil your sugar. Boiling your sugar changes the composition of the sugar and is not good for the bees, okay? So you don't want to boil the sugar. You just want warm water, because warm water makes it much, much easier to put the sugar into the water. So we're gonna get this water hot, but now we're going to measure out the sugar. So while the water's warming up, we're going to take our handy dandy broken but works so well Pampered Chef scissors, and I'm not promoting Pampered Chef, I'm just here to tell you I love these particular scissors. We're going to take our bag of sugar and we're going to open it up. So as we said earlier, I want 16 and a half pounds of sugar. So I'm going to pour, I think this bowl still holds 8 pounds of sugar, and we're going to pour out 8 pounds of sugar. Twice. That's a lot of sugar. Okay, so I blew it. We're gonna go to 9 pounds. 9 pounds, 2 ounces. Okay, and that we're then going to take and dump into our bigger bowl. Okay, then we're going to do that same process all over again. I guess I'm going to do 7.5 pounds because I wasn't paying attention as I was doing that. So let's pour again. 7.5 pounds. And then our water will be close and we'll be ready to go. Actually 7.3 ounces is going to be exactly what I wanted. So there you have it. Here's all the sugar. And I know that's a lot of sugar. Fall feeding is not cheap, I'm here to tell you, but again, it's something we got to do. Okay, so the water is getting warm, getting close. We're getting some bubbles. And when it gets a little bit hotter, I'm going to pour that sugar in and we're going to stir it, stir it, stir it. This is about as warm as we really need the water to be. See a little bit of bubbles on the bottom. You don't need it to be boiling. The water is going to cool way down the second that you put the sugar in it. So here's the process. You just simply take the sugar and dump it in. And yes, I know that the heat is still going, but I've also cooled the water down considerably. And there is 16.5 pounds of sugar. And now you turn the heat off and you stir and you stir and you stir and you keep stirring until the sugar is completely dissolved and you have clear water. It's a sticky mess, so be careful when the spoon comes out. It'll drip the side of your pot. Everything is sticky. It's basically like honey or nectar, not honey. It's nectar at this point. So we're going to keep stirring. Now we're going to give it a minute or two. There's a lot of bubbles in right now, so I'm going to let those bubbles settle out, and then we'll decide how much more we have to stir. But you can start to see that it's getting a little bit clearer. It just takes a lot of time. You got to get it all stirred in. So then after it's stirred in, I'm going to show you my little trick for keeping sugar water fresh longer, because it likes to mold. And if you keep it in a container that will have at least a little bit of air to it, it will mold. So I'm going to show you my technique of bottling my water. So there you have it. I'll show you the finished product when that all sells out. So I promised you a handy hint. I'm going to give you a handy hint or tip. This stuff will mold pretty quick. Okay? You know, these are the tops you put on the feeders, right? They have the holes in them. But what I do is whatever I don't feed right away, I put an actual seal on it. I pour these when things are pretty warm. I mean, not boiling hot, and I can touch it, but when they're pretty warm. And it basically, it seals it just like a can. And that lets you keep it for a long time. And when I say a long time, this is some one-to-one that I did in the early spring that I didn't need. But you can see it's not moldy. It's perfectly fine to use. I will be able to keep this all the way until next spring and still use it because there's no air getting to it, it's sealed, and you know, it's just not gonna mold. So that's your handy hint. These are cheap. They come with the mason jars oftentimes. So there you go. I want to show you how I'm going to put these feeders on and how I configure my hives. Before we do that, I want to talk about the different types of feeders that are out there, and there are tons of them. The two that I use are pretty common, and basically what I'm doing is I take my jar. This isn't a good example, but I got my jars in my cooler back here. But there are jars that they're called Boardman tops, or they're just feeder tops that go on top of your 1 quart jar. And then the jar just goes on top of your hive as long as you have inner covers that have the circle and not the diagonal, because if you've got that, then well, it's just not going to work. But there are then other feeders that you can buy that will fit those. There's tons of stuff on the market. If you just search through, even on Amazon or Daydent or Hilco, I think has a whole bunch. Any of the big bee houses. I'm going to show you all sorts of different types that are out there. Jar feeding is a very, very, very common one. And then another one that I use also, and this is in combination with this, is called a Boardman feeder. And a Boardman feeder fits onto the front of the hive. And I'm going to show you that in just a few minutes. Basically, it sits in the front of the hive at the entrance of it. And then you take your feeder jar and you put it in top and walk away. I don't normally use these on full hives or in the fall or when there's a dearth on, but I do use these almost exclusively on my nooks and on any swarms I catch and any 5-frame splits. Mainly because it's just so simple, and I can look down a whole row of splits or swarms or whatever I might have, just nook boxes, and I can tell which jars need more feed, which jars don't need feed, and I can tell a lot by just telling what's in the jar. I'm not going to get into that right now, but these are a really handy thing to have as well. When you use these during a dearth, it can cause robbing because it's an open feed and other bees discover, hey, there's feed and it's right at the entrance. So I don't use them during a dearth because of that. You might have good luck with them, so try it. Other types of feeders that are out there. Another really common one, and this is what we originally used in the garden club apiary. Our box sits on top of your deep box. This is a shallow, obviously, but sits on top of that and basically has floating trays in it, and you fill the box, it's watertight. You fill the box up with syrup and the trays float on that. It's a good way to go if you want to have a lot of feed on a hive and you can't get back to it. But what I've found is that it's real easy for those to not float like they're supposed to. And when they don't float like they're supposed to, you can open up your top and see just unbelievable amounts of dead bees. And it's really discouraging. And I saw an entire hive basically die because they all went up there to feed and then they all died out and then there wasn't enough bees to really take care of it. It's just, anyway, so that's one of those things. It's got its pros, it's got its cons, but that's a really common one. You'll see a lot of the commercial beekeepers using called bucket feeders. It gives you a whole gallon full of feed and they basically just go on top of a hive without any inner cover or anything else on it, and feeds basically the same way that I'm using with this, just in larger amounts, which is, you know, another good way to go. Anyway, like I said, there are lots and lots of different feeders out there. It's worth investigating what works for you and what works for you best. I'm just going to show you what works for me. There's a advantage to this is that, and I'll show you, it's enclosed. So when I need to check on the amount of feed in, all I have to do is lift up the inner cover. I'm not exposed to bees at all. And switching these out is super, super simple because the jar is in, you got another jar, you take one jar out, you put the other jar in, and the bees don't even know what hit them. So it's really easy to work it that way. Disadvantage, biggest one, these are only a quart, so you can be changing these fairly often. So you gotta be willing to be out in your yards. Now, you know, I'm lucky because, you know, this yard is 300 yards from my house, which is very easy because all my equipment's here. And my other yard is only about 400 yards that way, but it's across the creek through the woods, so I got to take a road around to it. Anyway, you've been on that trip before. So that's one of the disadvantages, but I feel like the advantages far outweigh the disadvantages for me. So let's grab all the equipment we need and let's head over to the hives and let's put these on. It only takes a second. And I'm only going to show you one because how many more do you need to see? It's a pretty simple process. So let's get on with it. So really a pretty easy process. One thing I want to point out though is that, well, that was loud, but you've heard me say that before. You see this, the notch is up, and you don't want the notch up, you want to be able to seal everything off. So I will take this inner cover, and I don't really care about the bees that are on the top here, but I got to get the bees off from underneath it. So I'm going to shake them down and send these guys flying because they'll be pissed, but okay. And then I'm just going to do a quick shake. Everybody's off. Flip it over. Okay, cover up the hole. But look how easy this is going on here. And I've even got some propolis in there, but that'll seal it off a little bit. Make sure your jar is tight. And there you have it. That's how it works. It couldn't be any simpler. And then you just want to get the bees out. The few bees that you've got. So see there, everybody out, go, 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 because you don't want to be in there, trust me. Okay, that's done. I got one straggler. The cover goes back on, and voila. And again, you want the notch down so that bees and bugs and other things can't get in there, especially ants. So they're kind of a bear. And there you have it. That's all there is to it. Then easy to come back and then just, I can pop the cover, go, okay, well that's how much is in there and that's how much is not in there. And you're on with it. So that's it. So these Boardman feeders are really, really simple to use. You just simply squeeze the bees out of the way and then you slide them in. See? I slide them all the way to the end because otherwise they'll propolis it. Then you take your full bottle, this is just a faux full bottle, and you put it on. And then you walk away. That's all there is to it. So a really simple process. It works great. I said especially I use them for nooks. I use them for nooks and small swarm box, 5 boxes. It works great. So that's what you've got with that. Anyway.